We're going to review rule. We're doing rule 6, which is live ball and dead ball, and we're doing rule 10, which is fouls and the penalties on fouls. So, and if we get through, and we've got clips to go along with that as we move forward on it. All right. So everybody see that screen? Okay. Anybody see that screen? Okay.
Yes.
Excellent. Don't all respond at once. It would be too hard on me. All right. So live ball and dead ball. Let me move my. And this is important for a lot of different reasons, that you know the status of the ball, whether it's dead or it's alive. So the ball becomes alive when on a jump, it leaves the official's hand. So that's once a game. And these are the only 3 times the way the ball can get put in play in alive, right? So beginning of the game, or if there's an overtime period, official releases the ball into the air for a toss, the ball becomes live. On a throw-in, when the ball is at the disposal of the thrower, which either the official has handed the ball to the thrower and the thrower hasn't fumbled it and has it in their hands, has bounced it to the thrower, ditto, throwers has it in their hands, or if it's available to the thrower. So it's like lying on the ground right at the thrower's feet, and for whatever reason, the thrower doesn't feel like picking it up, or they're not there to pick it up because they're slow getting out of the huddle. That would be the 3rd time that the ball is in play. It's the only 3 ways that the ball can be in play. The ball can be live, excuse me. And that you will see further as to why that becomes important. All right. So jump ball, the way to start the game, and the first way to put the ball, make the ball live. So the jump ball begins when the ball leaves the ref's hand. That's when the ball becomes live. Until it's tossed, non-jumpers can't move around or into the circle. And the circle, which surrounds the center court jump ball area, is considered to be 3 feet deep. So basically, if you're standing on the circle, or you're standing like a step off the circle, you're kind of considered in the circle. And the jumper, those players can't move until the ball is tossed, until the ball is up in the air. And I've got a clip of a game Mike Lloyd and I did 2 weeks ago where we ended up with a violation on this, and we'll show you that a little later tonight. And then the jumpers can't touch the ball until it reaches its peak. So you'll hear things about, they stole the tap. Can't leave the circle before the ball is touched. So you don't have to jump if you're one of the jumpers, but you can't just walk away without the ball being touched. You can't catch the ball until the jump ball ends. Right. So you tip the ball and then you catch it. That's not legal. And you can't touch the ball more than twice. So you can go up and tip it. You can go up and you can tip it again, and then it needs to be touched by somebody else or the floor. And that's where it says at the end, the jump ball ends when the ball touches a non-jumper, an official, or the floor. And then they still have in the rule book, the basket or the backboard, which I think is just a throwback to when we used to do jump balls like the NBA does it in 3 different locations, at the free throw lines as well. Because I don't see anybody having a situation where the tip happens and it ends up hitting the basket or the backboard. So frankly, with jump balls only being once per game now, the idea is like, get the ball in play. Last year with COVID, we actually only, we gave the ball to start the game to the visiting team, and we didn't have any jump balls for whatever reason. That was going to put us more at risk than anything else in the game. So they eliminated the jump balls. And frankly, a lot of us like that because, you didn't have to kind of deal with the whole situation at the beginning of the game. It's important in the sense that it kind of sets a tone for the game. It shows you being in control of the game, making things flow smoothly, Nice strong toss, ball goes up in the air, ball gets tipped, we start the game, everybody rolls forward. But that's the jump ball administration. You'll do it. I don't know. Have you done it in class in the mechanics class yet, or is it haven't gotten there yet? Is anybody alive?
Yeah, they went over jump ball in the last class.
Okay. And hopefully then some of this sounds somewhat familiar to you.
Yeah.
Okay. Section 4 of Rule 6 talks about alternating possession, the AP arrow. So alternating possession occurs when a held ball happens, when the ball goes out of bounds and is simultaneously touched. Simultaneous violations occur. A live ball lodges between the backboard and the ring, unless it's on a free throw or a throw in, which is then a violation. Opponents commit simultaneous basket interference violations. A pointer interruption can't be determined. So essentially, the place that you're going to see this more times than not is on held balls, right? So two players grab the ball at the same time. You put the ball back in play by the alternating possession arrow. And then you'll learn about when the throw in ends and when the arrow shifts for that change in direction. The rest of them, in terms of simultaneously going out of bounds, most of the time we would tell you make a ruling, so you go one way or the other. And if you're not sure, you can ask your partner for help. And between the two of you, you should be able to figure out which way the ball should be going. The live ball lodging between the basket and the ring, backboard and the ring happens sometimes. That might be the other time you have an alternating possession. But most of the time, AP will happen on a held ball. Or if there's like a foul with the ball is up in the air and nobody has the possession, team control of it at all, and there's a double foul, you might be able to have to put the ball in play by alternating possession. Okay, so we talked about what's a dead ball. And now we can talk about what's a live ball. Or, excuse me, you talk about what's a live ball. Now we need to talk about what's a dead ball. So the ball becomes dead and remains dead when a field goal is made, when a goal is made. So once the ball goes through the basket, the ball is dead until the ball becomes back at the available to the thrower, and then the ball becomes live again. So there's a period of time, ball goes through the basket, ball's dead, clock keeps running, but the ball's dead and it doesn't become live again until the ball's available to the thrower for a throw-in. That becomes important on things like fouls that happen during that period. If there is a foul that happens after the ball goes through the basket and before the ball's ready to be thrown in, it is a technical foul, because all fouls that occur in dead ball time is a technical foul. The other place it's important is in granting timeouts. So either team can call a timeout when the ball is dead. And so the team that has just scored the basket, if they want to call timeout at that point in time, they need to get it before the thrower is ready to throw the ball in play again. As officials, we're actually not really good at that when we're granting timeouts. The ball will go through the team that just scored. The coach will like suddenly think it's a good idea to call timeout, and he starts calling timeout, and the other team already has the ball out of bounds and is starting to be ready to be throwing the ball in. We should not be granting a timeout in that situation, but oftentimes we do. Everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay. Crystal, you're going to be my favorite person tonight because I at least know that somebody's hearing me.
Thanks.
Okay, other times the ball becomes dead. Unsuccessful free throw. If it's the first of more than a free throw, where it's going to become live at the end of it. So if you got a 2-shot free throw and the first free throw is unsuccessful, the ball becomes dead. When time expires on the game or shot clock, unless the try is in flight, right? So the shot clock goes off and the ball's still in the shooter's hand. Game clock goes off, ditto, ball's still in the shooter's hand, the ball's dead. If the ball's up in the air, it can't become dead until the shot is completed. when an official blows their whistle, unless a try is in flight, the ball becomes dead. So you're blowing a violation, you're blowing a foul. And again, if you're blowing the foul when the ball is in flight, that ball doesn't become dead until we know whether the shot's going to be good or not.
But on that violation, does the will the clock stop?
Yeah, the clock stops when the whistle blows.
Okay.
So if there's a throw-in violation, so the ball is live because you handed it to the player, but basically the clock is still not started. And
Correct.
there's a throw-in violation of any sort, offense or defense. Is it become, is it dead again? Like what happened there? It stayed
Well,
dead? It's
Yeah,
live.
it
officially,
becomes
right?
well, it becomes dead again. So what will happen on a violation is the official will blow their whistle,
Okay,
right? And the ball becomes dead again, right? So the
Thank you.
ball's live and you're counting your 5 count to
okay.
get the ball in play, and somehow, if a violation or a foul occurs before the ball becomes in play, you're still blowing your whistle, you're stopping the clock, and that you're stopping play, and at that point the ball becomes dead again.
In that case, not clock at this point, it's your
Not
count.
clock. Well, it depends. A throw in after a basket, for instance, the clock is still running. A throw in after a violation or something, the clock is not running.
Okay, thanks.
So balls also become dead when there's a foul other than a player or team control occurs. A free throw violation by the throwing team, ball becomes dead, or a violation occurs. And I will give you some video clips of when these things are live balls and dead balls here when we got in a second. So essentially, I would say the ball becomes dead when a goal is made and when the official blows their whistle. And if you kind of can't think of those two things, then you'll get most of the time of when the ball is dead. That is the summary of Rule 6. Live ball, dead ball, jump ball administration, alternating possession. Easy, right? Should have no trouble rolling through those test questions. All right, Rule 10. Anybody got anything else on Rule 6 they want to talk about? Nothing.
No, I'm good.
No, I don't.
Good. Okay, so Rule 10 is fouls and penalties. And it starts out talking about technical fouls. And I'd like to kind of think about breaking technical fouls into 2 different categories. One set of technical fouls are kind of administrative in nature, and the other set of technical fouls relate more to sportsmanship, conduct. The technical fouls that are kind of administrative in nature are less onerous on the coach, primarily as it relates to whether he can stand and coach his team or whether he has to sit, and whether he's at risk of being ejected if he continues to get more of these technicals. So that is not a problem on the administrative technicals. It is a problem on the sportsmanlike technicals that have to do with things happening on his bench. Okay, so the big picture is all technical fouls, except for if you have them on both teams at the same time, a double tech, are 2 shots plus the ball at the division line across from the scorer's table. So technical happens pre-game, technical happens at halftime, during a timeout, while the ball's in play, whatever it is. The team that did not commit the technical is going to be shooting 2 free throws by any team member. You can even take somebody off the bench and have them shoot the tees if you want to. And then the ball at the division line across from the scorer's table. And then all technicals.
I have a question.
Yep.
So they spoke about it yesterday, like if you have somebody that subs in off the bench to shoot the free throw, now that other person, if you want to resub, if you want to bring somebody in, somebody else off to bring the other person in, it has to be a different person, correct? Like you can't bring somebody in to shoot and then take the shooter back out and bring the other person in, right?
You can't bring the same person back in, right? So when you substitute, the substitute needs to stay out of the game for at least 1 tick of the clock.
1 tick of a clock. Okay.
The
Right.
guy
What if
who
they call
came in, the guy who came in and shot the free throws, you can sub him back out again or her back out again, but you would need to bring in somebody new off the bench for that substitution.
What if a timeout's used? Same rules apply?
Doesn't matter. It's timeout. You still have to have another tick of the clock.
Okay, that was the question yesterday. If you did take a timeout, can you do it? So it doesn't matter with the timeout.
Correct.
Okay,
Still
thank you.
needs to be a tick of the clock. Okay, so basically all technical fouls count toward team fouls. It says except for the indirect to the head coach. When there's an indirect to the head coach, there's a direct to somebody else. So every time you put your hands together or make the form of a T, it's going to count as a team foul. Okay. And then the head coach is ejected when they receive 2 direct technical fouls. So, I'm looking at you, coach, and you're yapping at me, and that's a technical foul. And it's later in the game, you're yapping again, and my partner gives the technical foul. That gets an ejection. Or a combination of 3, which would mean 2 indirects and direct, or 3 indirects. And the indirects come from technicals being given to somebody else on the bench. So the coach is responsible for the folks that are on the bench. And to the extent that the bench is mouthing off or doing something and gets a technical foul, that's when the coach gets what's called an indirect technical foul. Not too confusing, although I recall this being a little fuzzy when I first started, for sure. Everybody okay with that?
Yes. I got a little thrown off by the whole, sorry to go back just a couple minutes ago, but I got a little thrown off with the whole timeout, somebody subs in, 1 tick of the clock. I understood the technical foul part where if somebody substitutes in to actually shoot the technical fouls, he or she can sub or can go back out. So basically, effectively, just come in, shoot the foul, the free throws, and go back out.
Right.
But the person who came in or came out must stay on the court for 1 tick of the clock.
Must stay off the court for 1 tick of the clock.
Oh, must stay off the court for 1 tick of the clock.
Right. So number 5's on the floor.
Yeah.
The coach wants number 15 to come in and shoot the technicals. 5 goes out, 15 comes in. 15 can't do anything besides shoot technical fouls, and the coach doesn't want him in the game for the rest of the time. So he subs 15 back out after the 2 free throws. Just can't put 5 back in. Can put anybody else on his bench, but can't put 5 back in.
And then can we just briefly talk about the timeout part of that same conversation?
Sure. So dead ball, play stops, sub is at the table, 2 comes into the game, 5 goes out of the game.
Okay.
And then before we put the ball back in play,
Okay.
somebody calls timeout.
Okay.
You go to the bench and 2 wants to come back in the game. They go to the table and they're waiting there, and you're starting to put the ball back in play, and he's standing there at the table. He still can't come back into play until after the tick of the clock. Just
Okay.
the fact that there was a timeout.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
Thanks for that clarification.
All right. All right. So technical fouls again, non-conduct related. So administrative tees, this kind of happens before the games for the most part, and it has a lot to do with, whether your roster is in the book 10 minutes before the tip, whether the roster has any changes to it after it's submitted, like you put the wrong number in or you forgot to put a player in. That ends up being an administrative technical. In your first year refereeing, I wouldn't get too worried about this. If you're doing, rec games on a Saturday afternoon, or a middle school game on a Wednesday afternoon, and, the scorebook isn't ready until 2 minutes before the game starts, all good. It's just fine. Or, somehow they forgot to put a kid in the book. Depending upon what league you're playing in, you may or may not decide that needs to be a technical foul or not. But by rule, these are the things that need to be in there. And then, so that would be a T, and it only would happen once. So if before the game started, the players' names weren't in the book at 10 minutes and you gave the team a technical foul, and then 1 minute into the game, you find out that the player that they did put in the book isn't really number 10, it's number 12, that's not another technical foul. They kind of got a free screw up for the rest of the day. You only give them one of these per game. Okay.
How do you-
I
And
have a
How do-
question.
How do you
Yep.
implement that? So would you start the game with a technical foul, or would you still do the jump and then have the technical?
Nope. You start the game with a technical foul.
And then it goes to possession error, or like, or you just give
And
the
then,
other-
and then you give, again, all technicals are 2
Okay.
free throws and the ball at the
Oh,
division
yeah,
line,
yeah. Okay.
right? So then when you
Is-
give the
is-
player the ball at the division line, the arrow gets pointed, the AP arrow gets pointed in the other direction.
Okay.
Um,
Is that administrative technical? Is that an indirect to the coach?
no, this is what we're talking
Nope.
about. So
So it's just
these are
administrative.
non-conduct related. So the non-conduct related stuff does not impact the coach for the most part.
Okay.
Okay. Team technical. Having more than 5 players on the court at one time, requesting an excess timeout. They're allowing the game to become actionless, basically not ready to start the half within 1 minute. The rest of the stuff you're not going to really see for the most time, or another violation of a delay warning. So when there's if there's a basket made and the ball is coming down out of the basket, and the team that just makes the basket taps the ball away, the first time they do that, it's a delay warning. And then the second delay warning, and that might be for like a player reaches through the boundary line on a throw in, the defensive player reaches through, doesn't make contact with anything, but is reaching through the boundary line. That's a second delay, and that would be a technical foul. And that's a team technical foul. So basically the team technicals are having too many men on the ice, is the way I describe it, asking for an excess timeout, or basically having more than one delay in a game, which causes a technical foul. So that technical, like, it's not on the kid that did it, it's on the whole team. And it's not a real conduct violation. It's just more of a mess up violation, right? Oops, sorry. And then a substitute technical comes on the floor without reporting to the scores table or being beckoning by official. I'm not sure what one foul for either or both requirements means. I didn't write this one. Okay, so that would be a substitute, none of which impacts the coach. But again, it's still team foul, 2 free throws, ball at the division line. Okay.
Yes.
And you get to conduct related T's. And from a player's standpoint, if the player goes and changes his number, it's a technical on the player. You'll never see this. Purposefully or deceitfully delaying returning after legally being out of bounds. So basically, running behind the team bench or something to try to get down the floor where nobody will see him. It's a technical foul. And then most of the rest of the stuff you can kind of put in the big category of unsporting, right? Grasping the basket at any time during the game, except to prevent injury. Dunking or stuffing or attempting to stuff a dead ball, right? So if you're going up and dunking and you grasp the basket and you touch the basket, you touch the ring, it's fine. If you go and you dunk the ball and you do a pull-up on the ring, unless you're doing it to prevent injury because there's people below you, that's a technical foul. I'm guessing you're not going to see too much of that in your first middle school game. If you do, you probably want to rush over and offer the kid a contract as opposed to calling a technical on him. But otherwise, by rule, that kind of thing is a technical foul. Or like when the ball is dead, there was like a partial breakaway and we end up calling a foul at center court and the kid keeps going and driving and dunks the ball. That's a technical foul because it's kind of delay a game and showing up the opposition. So it's kind of unsporting. illegally contacting the backboard or the rim. So this is one that you might see and hear, right? So players are going down the floor, somebody's trying to go make a layup, kid jumps to go try to block the shot and hits the backboard. And invariably we hear people screaming, from coaches to fans to players, that's goaltending is the word that they will use. We would know that goaltending is only touching the ball on the way down, or they'll say basket interference, and it's not any of those above. The only thing you can call, if you want to call anything, is illegally contacting the backboard or the ring, and that would be when you're not making a play on the ball, right? So if you're going up and you're trying to block the shot and you hit the backboard and miss blocking the shot, it's nothing. You know, if the shot's going on one side of the backboard, you run down the floor and you jump on the other side of the backboard and you slap the backboard, that could be considered unsporting and worthy of a technical foul. But that's the only thing that happens when you hit the backboard. And then committing an unsporting foul, which, intentionally or flagrantly contacting an opponent when the ball is dead, and such contact is not a personal foul. So again, the ball is dead, that contact is going to end up being considered a technical foul because the ball is dead. It's either going to rise to the level of being a technical foul, or it's going to be incidental and not worthy of a foul. So, ball goes through the basket and kids run into each other and they kind of bounce off each other. There's really no harm. There was no intention. You would kind of just call that, again, depending upon the magnitude, but, be kind of like if it happened while somebody was dribbling, you'd be like, oh yeah, that was a foul. But because it was after the basket has been made, you quite likely could ignore it unless it raised itself to a level where you needed to call a foul, and then it would be considered a technical foul. And then, being charged with fighting, committing goaltending during a free throw, which I don't think any of us have ever seen. And then reaching through the boundary line plane and dislodging or touching or dislodging the ball. So you're playing defense, you're trying to distract the thrower in, you reach through, which would be a delay of game warning if you didn't touch anything, and you dislodge the ball, it's a technical foul. If you hit the player, the thrower, it's an intentional foul. But if you hit the ball, it's a technical foul.
So like if you just slap at the ball while it's in his hand, in other words, that scenario, which I'm sure we've seen.
Right, and that's a technical foul. It hits the ball, it's a technical foul. And the distinction there is if you hit the arm and it's an intentional foul, the player whose arm gets hit shoots the 2 free throws, and then the ball gets put in play right there where the foul was committed on the end line, or on wherever you were on the sideline. If it's a technical foul, so you've touched the ball, anybody can shoot technical fouls, and then the ball gets put in at the division line, because we've said every single technical foul is 2 free throws, ball at the division line. A lot of stuff to process.
Yeah.
It's not going to be stuff that you're going to grasp in one sitting or probably in 1 year. But the player tee, where the player turns around and mouths off at you or mouths off at the other kid, or that kind of thing, that's the stuff you're going to see in your first year for the most part. And that's the things you just need to know is a technical foul, and then how do you process the technical foul. All right. And it's still here with the player technical foul, the 5 players that are on the floor for your team, the coach is not responsible for those technical fouls. The rules committee thinks that the coach is not able to control that action out on the floor. So when there's a player technical foul, the coach doesn't end up getting an indirect technical as well. There's just a technical on the player. So it's a personal foul on the player. It counts to one of his 5, and a team foul, but nothing to the coach. Now we get to the point where we start talking about things that impact the coach. So bench personnel, including the head coach, kind of need to behave themselves, essentially. They can't commit an unsporting foul. They can't enter the court unless by permission of an official to attend to an injured player. They can't stand in the bench area during a game, and they can't leave the confines of the bench during a fight or when a fight might occur. Except for the coach and the assistant coaches can jump onto the floor to prevent a fight or to stop a fight from breaking it, either way. So essentially the bench needs to sit there and cheer for their teammates, and that's it, right? Not yell at the officials and not taunt the other team. Effectively sit on the bench and cheer for your teammates.
So I'm not following the coach can't stand in the bench area?
But we're going to get there. So this is the rest of the bench personnel. So the head coach, the rest of the coaches, the assistant coaches can't stand, and the players on the bench can't stand. Other than to get up momentarily, cheer a great play, and then sit back down, or when a teammate's coming out of the game to congratulate them, that kind of thing. But otherwise, you need to sit.
Huh, okay.
Okay. All right, so now the head coach. So the head coach can basically coach in his coaching box. And the coaching box is that 28-foot box that starts at the end line and goes 28 feet up toward center court. If your courts are properly marked, there's a line there that tells you where 28 feet is. But you can also kind of look out on the floor, and the tops of the circle is like 22 feet. So it's another 3 feet from the top of the circle that they can go to get to 28 feet, another 5 feet to the top, 25 feet, so another 3 feet to the top from the top of the circle that they can go to, and coach within the coach's box. And then they lose the coaching box privilege once there's the first technical that's charged to them, either directly or indirectly. And then at that point in time, they need to also sit, except for to request a timeout, confer with personnel at the scorer's table to request a timeout, or to replace or remove a disqualified or injured player. Coach needs to replace or a disqualified player within 15 seconds. So if somebody ends up with 5 fouls, you report the foul to the table. The table says, hey, that's 5 on number 3. You turn, you look at the coach and you say, coach, that's 5 fouls on number 3. You turn back to the table and you say, I need a horn, which means start a 15-second clock. And then the coach has 15 seconds to replace that player. And if he does not have him replaced in 15 seconds, it's a technical foul. Again, you're not going to do this in middle school or your rec games. And, you know, there are definitely people who don't do it in the high school games as well, but that's the rule as written, is that you need to do that. Okay.
Do you think coaches know about the whole technical sit down story?
I think they know it more than they let on that they know it, right? So when we do give out a technical to the coach, or we give out a technical to the bench, which impacts the coach because he now has got an indirect technical and he needs to sit, most likely one of us will walk over to the coach and tell them. Because if you don't, they'll keep standing until, ooh, maybe we won't notice. It is amazing the difference in the energy level of the bench if the coach actually doesn't have a coaching box privilege and they have to sit. It is amazing how the energy level goes down. It's pretty nice. But we will normally tell the coach that they've lost their coaching box privilege. All right. Other things the head coach can't do: not permit a team member to participate after being removed from the game. Don't often, if ever, see that. Can't wear an illegal uniform. So if the uniform, like the home team is supposed to wear white, and if they come out in blue and they don't have a white uniform, that would be an illegal uniform, and it would be a direct technical to the coach, and they would lose their coaching box privileges for the rest of the game, which goes a little bit against my conduct versus my sportsmanship versus, you know, administrative kind of thing. But sorry, it is what it is. So if there's an illegal uniform, the coach ends up getting a direct technical foul. And, you know, you do end up getting a direct technical foul if they permit the team members to leave the bench in the playing court for non-authorized reason, which is a different from leaving the bench on a fight. We're going to get to that here in a second.
A direct technical foul is 2 points, right?
It's
Or
not
do you
2
still
points,
have-
it's 2 free throws. They're
Or you
all
still have
2
a
free
shooter.
throws. Now,
free
actually, Ron, you're making a great statement, right? So when you're working rec games and maybe even some middle school games, they may have a local rule which says we're not shooting free technicals, we're just giving them 2 points in the ball. So, you
Okay.
call a technical foul, scorekeeper puts 2 points on the other team and they put the ball off on the sideline. And part of the reason for that, besides speeding up play a little bit, is that kids' free throws percentages in those younger years are not all that great. So they, decided they wanted to really make the penalty for technical better. So it was like, all right, we're just going to give them two points. But by rule, you're shooting 2 free throws.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so that's the summary of the technical fouls. And then we get into more the common fouls, right? Section 7 talks about contact. Most of this stuff is common sense, right? You can't hold, push, charge, trip, impede progress of the opponent. You kind of read through all these along the line. Who's causing the contact, the dribbler having more rights than the defender. The last bullet point at the end, which starts with the following act constitutes a foul when committed against a ball handler dribbler. This was probably put in 5 or 6 years ago. We still have this concept, but it's less, we don't use it quite as much, but we have this concept called rhythm, speed, balance, and quickness, RSBQ. And interestingly, like the NBA uses it in a different order, but RSBQ in high school. And we would say if the contact impacted the ball handler's RSBQ, it was a foul. We were all really bad at it. We allowed far too much contact that was impacting RSBQ without calling fouls. And from the NBA down, there was this desire for more freedom of movement and the desire to kind of make those fouls, so they basically took hand checking out of the game. And these 4 bullet points here are basically the automatic hand checking fouls. So when they put 2 hands on a ball handler dribbler, it's a foul immediately. If they put an arm bar on the dribbler, it's a foul immediately. If they put a hand on the dribbler and leave it there, it's a foul immediately. And, so all they allow for is 1 touch, and they call it like hot stove touch, right? So you can kind of line up the ball handler dribbler. You can put your hand out once and touch him and then pull it back, and that's it. And then if you put your hand back on him again, it's an automatic foul. When they first brought this thing out, everybody moaned for sure that, you're calling things too tightly, blah, blah, blah. It's made it easier on us because they're automatic. You don't have to say, well, did that impact his rhythm, speed, balance, or quickness? Nope, it was 2 hands on the ball handler. So that's a foul. And coaches, it's been in place now for 5 or 6 years. Coaches have learned now to coach to that rule. And there's a lot less of it that you see. There's still a problem where they now try to like body up and move forward and cause contact that can still be a problem. But many players are much better with not using their hands to try to defend against the ball handler dribbler. Does that make sense to you guys?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Try it out when you're out there. It's kind of like, okay, there's 2 hands on the dribbler. Boop, that's a foul. It's like, okay, I can be that robot.
So I am picturing a situation though where a big is just kind of dribbling, into me with his back.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just kind of my arm bar is not extended, but I do have an arm bar to just kind of protect myself, protect my my junk or whatever. And is that a foul?
Well, it says placing an extended arm bar on a player.
Yeah.
So the answer is no. If you're kind of got it collapsed against your body.
Yeah.
And the answer is yes, if you're using it to prevent freedom of movement of that ball handler dribbler. Right. So if you're using it as a defense, well, if you're using it as a defender, if you're using it as an offensive mechanism, like you're putting it out there extended and you're trying to use it to keep the ball handler away from the basket, that's a foul.
Yeah.
All right, that's why do we not have anything on fighting? I got to hit on fighting here for a second. Let me stop my screen share. Okay. Let me get to the section. Okay, and what we didn't hit on was kind of penalties. So what happens on fouls that you do end up calling? So common fouls before the fifth, before the seventh foul of the quarter, no free throws, ball out of bounds, nearest where the foul occurred. Okay. Fouls between foul number 7, team foul number 7 and team foul number 9 result in 1-and-1 free throws. You make the first one, you get a second one. Fouls 10 plus, you get 2 free throws. Everybody pretty comfortable with that?
Yep.
So obviously, active shooting, everybody and his grandmother now uses and one every time the ball gets shot, regardless of whether there's anybody near the shooter or not. Ball goes in, gets fouled, you get 1 free throw, whether that's a 3-point goal or a 2-point goal. So 2 free throws if it's an intentional or a flagrant foul, plus the ball thrown in at the point where the interruption occurred. So intentional foul, excessive contact. You give the person who was fouled 2 free throws, and then that team the ball at the spot where the foul occurred. And then let's see. And then we talked about technicals in terms of two free throws in the ball. So the last one, and then there's things about what you do with multiple fouls, and they're so rare that I just wouldn't focus on it and worry about it at this point in time. I just think kind of just stay with what you've got here at this point in time.
When is a flagrant foul a technical foul?
When it's kind of irrelevant because it results in the exact same thing.
Okay.
Right. So flagrant foul is going to be 2 free throws on the ball, and a disqualification of the player. The player doesn't get kicked out of the gym. The player has to sit on the bench under the supervision of the coach, but they're no longer available to play. So
that's after the first flagrant. He gets
flagrant means you're done.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Okay.
Right. So things like balls on the floor, 2 players trying to go for the ball, there's a hell ball or something, and then one player lashes out and kicks the other player. That's a flagrant foul. They're getting ejected right then and there. Okay. And then the other team is shooting 2 free throws and getting the ball. Just as one example. Okay, fighting. And this gets complicated. And it's the only time maybe when you're refereeing that you would really love to have a monitor, right? Even a monitor that, until you get up to like Division I college, the monitors are generally useless because it's like one angle from way up in the top of the gym and you can't see anything from it anyway. But it does help when things get crazy in terms of things like a fight. So fighting, the players on the court, if you are participating in the fight, it's a flagrant foul and you are ejected. If you are just hanging around watching or holding the other people from getting involved in the fight, you're fine if you were one of the 5 players that were on the floor. If you leave the bench and whether you participate in the fight or just leave the bench because you want to have a better view, that's a flagrant foul and you're getting ejected. So if you don't participate in the fight, you're still you're disqualified, sorry. And then the head coach is assessed a maximum of 1 indirect technical foul, regardless of the number of players who leave the bench. So 3 players leave the bench, they don't do anything except for look and hold each other or whatever. The head coach gets an indirect technical foul, 1 indirect technical foul for those players leave the bench that left the bench, and those players are now all disqualified. If those players leave the bench and they participate in the fight, again, they're disqualified, and the head coach is assessed 1 indirect technical for each person leaving the bench and participating in the fight. So if he's had nothing happen all game long and 3 of his players leave and they go participate in the fight, those 3 players are going to get disqualified and the coach is going to get ejected because he's now gotten 3 indirect technical fouls. This will take a while for you to be able to kind of process that. And the harder part is being able to talk with your partner or partners and being able to say, hey, this is what happened. I saw 3 players get off the bench and stand there and didn't participate in the fight. Okay, if you're able to describe that, you can then figure out what the penalty needs to be. But the hard part is it becomes very chaotic very quickly, and trying to figure out who was on the floor and who's off the floor is really hard, really hard. And that's why
Just remembering all those numbers alone is going to be more than enough, right?
Absolutely. So a tip that I got was, if you do end up having with players on the floor, you're trying to keep them there, right? You're basically trying to take all the white players and putting them in one free throw line area, and taking all the blue players and putting them in the other free throw line areas, and just leaving them there. And so if there's more than 5 of them standing out there, you're like, you've got too many players out there and we've got some technicals, and you can kind of figure it out. The problem is when people start coming on and off and you just have no control over the whole situation. Without a monitor, you do the best you can.
Yeah.
In 15 years, I've had 2 fights total. And I'm sure we didn't get everything. But we got what we got, and we kind of moved on along the way. So that's it on the fighting part of it. Any questions?
I don't know what this, I think we had this conversation. What is it related to non-coaching staff and non-players? Other members of the audience, whatever, citizenry?
Keep people coming down from the stands
Sure.
and participating. Yeah, we're gonna let game management just handle those folks. So hopefully they're all gonna get ejected, but it's not gonna end up being a technical against either of the teams. We're not gonna try to identify, he's got a purple jersey on, it's like, must be working for, rooting for Garfield. We're not going there. We're responsible for the players and the bench personnel, and the game management is responsible for the fans. Sound good?
Thanks.
Let's do a few clips, if I haven't messed them up here. Everybody see this?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's clear.
So this is the start of the game. That's
Yeah.
Mike Lloyd. That's Mike Lloyd who's tossing the ball, and that's my arm up on the other side near the white team bench. And watch the player right in the middle of the court, the white player who's closer to the table on the circle. And what he does here, as you can see, he's now started to move, right? And Mike is still in the process of tipping the ball. So he was moving before the ball was tipped, before the ball was tossed. And the question was whether he was on the circle or not when he was moving, or if he was away. And if you're not on the circle, you can move before the toss. And from where I was, he was close enough to being on the circle, and he was basically just trying to tip, which he was able to do. And I blew the whistle and called a violation.
What,
So
what do
that's
you-
not a foul. It's a violation. It's Rule 9, not Rule 10, but we talked about it a little bit today. And what I'm kind of emphasizing here, and I've got another clip to show you that's going to be somewhat, there's two other clips that's somewhat similar about this. So this is the start of the game. We're all just kind of barely waking up, things are just about to start to happen. And you got to be ready from the get-go to get a play like this, and it's just like, and I admitted, I actually asked the coach for this video because I said, I'm not sure I got this right. I reacted to the play. I was surprised by the play. And I wasn't sure whether that white 23 was actually on the circle or not. But upon looking at it enough times, we decided that I got it right. But I actually think I might have got Pinky getting it right.
So what is the actual, what is the call? What is it technically called?
So it's a jump ball violation,
Jump ball violation.
right?
Okay.
And the ball was awarded to the blue team. And then when the ball got inbounded to the blue team, the alternating possession arrow was pointing toward white. So white would get the ball on the next
Okay.
AP arrow.
So in other words, they officially got the possession. Blue got the possession because of this violation.
Correct.
And then that meant the next possession, white would have the ball.
Correct. Yep. As I said, I didn't feel all that comfortable when that play finished. But I got lucky and got it right. So here's another one that'll end up having, and unfortunately that clip, because it was of our game, was only like 4 or 5 seconds long. This is going to be a little. Let's get that back to the beginning again. All right, so here's the tip. So far, so good. What happened?
But he caught the ball before it hit the floor.
Right. So the
He essentially touched
jumpers,
it twice, right?
the
touched it
jumpers
twice.
can't catch the ball until the jump ends. And the jump ends once something other than the jumper touches the ball.
Yeah.
So that's either one of the other players, one of the other 8 players that are out there, the floor, or the
official,
referee. So
right.
if the referee is standing in the middle of the floor there gets hit, the jump is over, and then the jumpers can grab the ball. But he. And they get rewarded by getting booed.
I was just gonna say, he did not like that. He didn't like it. I guess what's to stop them from next, just the guy going up and grabbing the ball, right? And throwing it to his guy.
Play 11.
Hang on a second. Let's do here. Uh-oh. Thought I lost y'all. Sorry about that. A little technical difficulty. All right, that's a jump ball violation. And here's another one on the toss. Just starting the game.
Whoa,
What do you got?
that's a
Well,
flip
he
kick.
didn't create a safe place for him to land.
Okay, what's your call?
That's a flagrant foul right there.
So you want to throw him out?
He undercut him, man. That was cheap. I mean, if I have a split second to decide that, that's boom, that's cheap.
Well, you don't have a split second. No,
Okay.
no one says you have to make this ruling in a second.
Okay. I think after 3 seconds, I might make the same.
I don't know what his intention is. It's clear he impeded his way down, so it's definitely a foul. It's blocking, right? Is or pushing. I'm not sure which one it is. I just don't know if it's flagrant.
Oh, man, that's,
Okay.
that's flagrant, man. That's cheap. Wow.
That's with intent.
I would say there's intent there.
Okay, we're gonna go back on this one for in a second. So,
I mean, it is the beginning of the game, so, but that's, woo.
Oh, wait, so, okay, wait, yeah, you guys made the point. It was before the ball was live. So that's a technical, right? Isn't that the whole point? The ball is not, isn't this part of live ball, dead ball thing?
well, again, I'm sorry, I'm messing up this VLC player here for a second. I just,
Didn't
It's
we
with
say that
intent.
anything that happens before the ball, like this is an administration of the tip off, so the ball is the ball live until the tip happens, and so that happened before he even touched the ball,
The
so isn't
ball,
that
I
just
think the
a
ball's live when it leaves the ref's hand.
okay,
Yeah.
now you're
ball's
having me
live,
look at the,
ball is live when it leaves the ref's hand.
okay.
I don't know. I wish there was a penalty box like there is in hockey, because that's where I'd send them, but that's,
It's live, but the clock doesn't start yet till it's touched, right?
Live, but the ball doesn't start until it's touched. I agree with that completely. Good. Let's see, where's my VLC? There it is. And there is my foul on the toss up again.
that's pretty dirty, man. I gotta
That's
say,
clear. That's clear.
Anybody else?
intent.
Hey, Crystal, I haven't heard from you. Now that I've got everybody else talking or a few other folks talking, what do you think?
I think that's an unsportsmanlike.
So what does that rise to? Just a intentional foul?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I would toss him. I would give the 2 shots and the possession.
Okay, so what I would do here, first and foremost, right? So somebody said, if I had to make this judgment in a split second, what would I say? Now you have to actually process the play in this split second in the sense of you have to see it. So I would, at this point in time, send the players to their benches, and I'd get the 3 of us together and I'd say, okay, what did you see? And hopefully we've got a pretty decent description of what we saw. The guy who probably has the worst view of it is the guy who's the crew chief who's throwing the ball up, right?
yeah.
So oftentimes that's the most experienced official out on the floor, and then you might have younger, lesser experienced officials in the other 2 slots. But you need to get those inexperienced officials together and say, what do you see? Now, whether that kid is truly hurt or, playing it for all it's worth, it's hard to tell, but, clearly he wasn't expecting that. Now you can see what's happening here is nobody has talked to anybody. And you got the official on the left-hand side going and reporting a foul.
Yeah.
Right? Without either of his 2 partners having any say whatsoever. With this guy, the guy closest to us just chopped the clock and he hasn't done anything. The guy on the other side following the foul. I personally here, and it's judgment, is why they pay us the big bucks. I am calling that a flagrant foul and I'm kicking them out.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing related to basketball in that play,
Nope.
and nothing other than desire to injure, in my viewpoint. And once again, you're barely awake. You're like still stretching your muscles to get ready for the game, and that play happens in the first play of the game.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, it's going to be one of those nights. And by the way, if you don't toss them, it's going to really be one of those nights.
Yeah.
Right? So just kind of a unique situation. So these clips here, there's a couple of clips we have here. And these are games that happened in Eastern Washington. So take a look at this play. Everybody see that?
Ooh, what's up, everybody? I'm Patrick Jones. This is your Buzz 60. Foul highlights from a Washington State high school basketball game are going viral. The game was between Connell and Highland high schools, and as the video shows, things
You got that one.
got pretty rough. But let's put things into perspective. The video was shot by an uncle of a Highland player, and it shows only Connell fouls that happened in the first 10 minutes, while a ton of trash talk was reportedly exchanged. And we all know how dramatic some sports parents can be. I'm sure both teams were mixing it up. The video's two culprits are both football linemen boasting statures bigger than 6'3", 230 pounds, going up against kids much smaller. A disparity that's not their fault and makes these fouls look worse than they are. One of the players, number 34, Cole Vanderbilt, has sat out since, and the school is looking into the game. But after all the press, I'm sure he's busy answering phone calls from college football programs anyway. Buzz 60, now you know, pass it on.
What do you guys think about the interpretation of that guy?
I can't say it on the air.
It's very animated.
Play it right here. That doesn't look good right there, right? When you're parallel to the ground,
Dude, you're gone.
something has
he's
not-
definitely happened, right?
That's a no.
That's not a play on the ball.
Right.
Not neither one of them.
So this was an interesting. There's several of these clips or compilations that have been going around. This one is obviously a little bit of an apologist for the white team, but there was several of these plays that the officials decided to not take care of during the game.
No kidding. Wow.
They basically called a regular foul on that play.
Ooh, what's up, everybody? I'm Patrick Jones. This is your Buzz 60. Foul highlights from a Washington State high school basketball game are going viral. The game was between Connell and Highland high
Here's
schools.
this one.
And as
It's just a.
the video shows, things got pretty
There, I think you just called the
rough.
foul.
But let's put things into perspective. The video was shot by an uncle of a Highland player, and it shows
Right there.
only Connell
Oh, it's only showing fouls by the white team.
calls from college football programs anyway. Buzz 60,
I got
now
maybe
you
two
know,
more clips.
pass it on.
Play 13. Is this an intentional foul?
What do you think? End of the game.
Yeah, yes,
mean-
because he has two hands on him.
So the two-hand thing that we talked about, Ron, was that's an automatic foul because on a ball handler dribbler, right? Two hands, arm bar,
Right,
one hand for a long time or multiple touches.
correct. So
I mean,
He's right.
technically, yes, because it's not a play on the ball, but I don't know if you would actually call that at the end of the game.
Do you mind just showing it? I know we don't normally have two chance data. Do you mind showing it though again?
Yep.
looked like he grabs him with two hands.
Here again, the player in blue extends both arms and grabs the player in white without playing.
Right?
Oh no, that we see that. I mean, I don't know what it is, but we see that happen all the time as a stop. That wasn't.
You're watching too much NBA. You told me that already.
Yeah.
They'd call that a take foul in the NBA. We'd call that an intentional foul in high school rulebook.
Okay.
Right. So there's, I think Crystal said there was no play on the ball, right? It's one of the definitions of what an intentional foul is. There's nothing there. And what we tell players near the end of the games, when you are in situations where it's a strategy to foul, is make sure you're making a play on the ball when you go to foul. And there's been points of emphasis in the rule books several different times over the last 5 years or so that they want this foul called an intentional foul because it is putting the offensive team at a disadvantage to not call it that way. The defensive team should have to make a play on the basketball in order to get just a common foul called here.
This should have been ruled an intentional foul.
So intentional foul, 2 free throws automatic and the ball, correct?
Yep.
Officials need to be aware that this is not a legitimate attempt to play the ball. It may be an unpopular ruling, but we have to enforce the rules and not put a team at an unfair disadvantage.
Can't do that.
This is what I just did. Let's roll that one through.
Play 11.
So once that, so this is kind of when the ball becomes dead and whether a basket counts on a player control foul, right?
Play 11.
Defender looks legal, right? We talked about what legal guarding position is.
Yep.
Player control foul, basket doesn't count. And that circle in the middle of the free throw line, restricted area, doesn't exist in high school. It's not a high school marking.
Number 24 in blue drives to the basket. Number 30 in white has established legal guarding position before number 24 leaves the floor to attempt to try for goal. The official correctly rules the player control foul.
He ate that
and
knee
should
pretty
indicate
good.
The player control signal at the
Yeah.
spot of the foul. In addition to the approved signals at the spot of the foul, the basket should have been canceled both at the spot and at the table. The trail and center officials move to the crash to ensure there is no further contact.
Good call, ref.
One in a row. I don't think I looked at this flip, so I have no idea what's happening.
You should be calling a tech on that kid. Should be a tech.
We just called an intentional foul.
What was that?
Well, he called an intentional foul, I think, for what they were.
Hey, they got 6 men on the court. There's 6 men on the court. Check him out. Hey, he's got to go. Send him over early. There you go. Hey, tell him to pay $3. $3. Go home. $3. $3. Hey, that's another team. That's another team.
What do you pay the cop for? Get him in here. Just score him out.
All right, so I'm not sure what you learned from this. The one thing I would say relative to this is when we give coaches technical fouls, the next thing our job is to do is to get away from them and let our partners handle them a bit, right? So coach is animated.
Yeah.
And the last thing you would like to do is be this guy who gives them his first technical foul and his second technical foul and ends up ejecting him. And then as he's walking off the floor to kind of continue to point toward the door to kind of bait him even further, right? So, as much as there is emotion in the game and the coaches and the players clearly have it, we need to try to be as level and unemotional as we can possibly be. Make those technical fouls kind of a business decision and a business action. And then, let whatever the consequences of those happen and have our partners help us with those consequences of those actions. So, whether the coach acts like a jerk or not, you can't control. You can only control what you're doing yourself.
But where is the partner? Where is the gym manager?
Well, no, the gym manager should be there.
Yeah.
But there will be definitely, particularly in the games that you first start with, you'll be lucky if the gym manager shows up 15 minutes later. We're working on that all the time.
Yeah.
Try to make those situations better. And people are obviously very aware of it. In the high school level, they've become much better at identifying themselves to us so that we know who the gym managers are when they get there, and they're making sure that they're opening locker rooms for us after the game and all that sort of stuff. But there will be times where the gym manager's nowhere to be found. And, you're kind of on your own with your partner or partners out on the court. But, you want to let others handle the irate actions of the coach. You don't want to be continuing to kind of point to the exit on them.
No, I agree with that. I'm just through this whole thing though. I'm like, okay, is there a police officer? Is there a gym manager? No one really.
Yeah, the cop probably isn't getting involved in something like that if there is one. And there isn't a police officer at every high school game. They're kind of hit or miss.
Yeah.
And they're missing when you need them, and they're there when you don't. But again, I would say more than anything, you call the technical. We always pregame where we say, if one of us has an unusual play, a technical foul, a hard intentional foul, or maybe an intentional foul, make sure we get together, at least two of us, and maybe the third person stays and observes the rest of the players out on the floor and talk about it before we go about doing anything else along the line. So, if I'm giving a technical to the coach, I'm giving the technical, and the very first thing I'm doing is I'm turning my back on him and I'm going the other way.
Yeah.
And if the coach continues to be demonstrative and screaming or throws his jacket or chair or whatever the heck he ends up doing, one of my partners is watching that and is going to end up giving the second tee and not me. I'm now 40 feet away from the guy, because you don't want to be sitting there thinking you're baiting him into the second technical by arguing with him. That's about it.
Good stuff. Thank you.
For those of you who have hung in there for the whole time, thank you much. Please try to do your rules. If you're stuck on stuff, just put an answer out there. If you want to discuss it, feel free to try to call me or email me or text me or do whatever. Reach out to Stacy if you want. She's on the East Coast, I think. So, her timing's a little bit different, but try to get it all done. We'll try to review. Next week, the rules will be really quick. The 2 rules that we'll go through will be pretty quick, and we'll try to go through some of the more interesting rule questions that you all had problems with. All right.
Thanks for everything.
Thank you.
Very nice.
Good training.
Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
See ya.